So I hope you enjoy that. Let me spend a few minutes and just go over a couple of terms that you're going to run into. We heard about the fact earlier on that really lean is about it's an extension of the Toyota production system. You just heard Muda is this Japanese term for waste. You may hear that a few times today. Kaizen, very important term, simply means continuous improvement. And what I'd like to do then is to just bring you very quickly through some terms that I think some of our other presenters today may throw out there and just to make sure that they aren't completely alien to you. This book, Lean Thinking, includes these 5 key terms. Value, value stream, flow, pull, and perfection turn out to be these 5 cornerstone concepts for understanding any process better in a different way. So these slides are all available as PDFs later on after the conference. So if you're furiously trying to keep up with me here, don't worry about it. You can get copies of this. We understand value from the eyes of the customer, from the eyes of the citizen. And then look at our processes and try to identify which of the steps provides value and which are classified then as waste. Things that we do that we can understand why they do them or why they're part of the current process, but really don't provide that value. So we're looking at those things that are classified as waste and try to improve upon those. We're looking to optimize the value stream and to actually create flow. Things going from value-added process to value-added process. It could be some request, requisition, a need for service, some type of a problem that needs to be solved. But we're trying to create flow to get these things to go through our processes faster. And again, like I said, we're not doing that by asking people to work faster or to work harder. They're already doing that. We're all dedicated to our jobs. We take that as a given, and we look at the white space, all of the delays and all of the loop backs and other things that happen that are a function of the process. What is it in the process design that's causing this, this output to be the way that it is? We want to create pull. That's one of the key ways to create this flow. And so we'll hear that term a bit throughout the day. This as opposed to push, where we're actually pushing our work onto the next downstream process. And the continuous pursuit of perfection. Once you improve something, then that's a small step towards a future state that we really want to achieve. So those 5 key terms turn out to be very important. Value, value stream, flow, pull, and perfection. As the director for a nonprofit that helps people in the state understand lean, you can imagine you go into this corporation or that department of government or whatever, and lean looks very different, and that's perfectly okay. You all have different processes and you do different things. The key question for me is how well are you understanding these key principles and then applying them to what it is that you do in your organization? That's the difference. So when we look for these wastes, we actually classify them according to 7 key groups that have been around since the beginnings of the Toyota production system, and 1 that's been added on. So 1 is transportation. Anytime that we have things that are moving longer distances that are necessary, then that's obviously a waste. Motion, anytime that anybody in an office has to get up and go do something and that motion does not result in in value being added to the work, that's obviously a waste. Processing, there are some steps that are just wasteful, they're inefficient, they're excessive. They can be done with a fraction of the resources that go into them, and the downstream customers will get equal or sometimes better results. Defects, that's pretty self-explanatory. Anytime we put work into something and it ends up being ripped up or in the scrap heap, that's obviously a waste. Waiting, anytime that we have people who are waiting around for any reason, for lack of information, for lack of work to do, for lack of access to the right materials, that's a waste. Work in process, any of this stuff that's clogging up your inboxes or your email boxes right now as we speak, that's a waste. It's stuff that's waiting there, waiting to be processed, and those are delays in the overall throughput. And then overproduction, making things sooner or in greater quantity than the customer or the citizen wants right now. Finally, there's this one that's been added recently, unused creativity. When you have people that work in a process for years and years, they develop an intuitive understanding about what works and what doesn't and why. And to leave that on the shelf is incredibly wasteful. As an external consultant, for somebody like me to come in and with the benefit of just a few hours interviewing people and then tell you how to do your job, that's actually a violation of this principle. The people who do the work are the ones who should improve the work. And that's a key tenet in lean thinking. So those are the things that we're empowering people in the organizations to do. That's the education that we're providing them, and we're simply putting a different way of thinking in their hands, and instead of just saying, do the work, we're saying, do the work and improve the work. That's the design of everybody's job function right now. Everybody has an additional duty right now, and it's called process engineer. Okay? So that's what we're asking people to do. I'm going to skip over these and then move forward to a couple of things that we heard about, and you may hear about further on during the day. You heard Jerry Bussell mention this thing A3. A3 actually refers to paper size in Europe, okay? But it's basically a technique for taking that one piece of paper and putting the whole PDCA cycle on it. So we want to start with a problem on the upper left corner and go all the way through and say, and because that problem is actually driven by these root causes, we're going to do these things to fix those root causes. Here's the results that we got, and here's the lessons learned. Okay? So it's a great opportunity for somebody to get the systematic thinking that's in their heads and get it down on paper where people can see it, where we can question it, where we can improve it, and where leaders can coach it. So it's a very useful technique, A3 thinking. This I'll just I'll include in the slides here. This is a Toyota veteran describing how it is that they used A3s, and an important distinction here, because in the US we have tended to use this as a form, something that needs to be filled out. Fill out the form, fill out the A3 form, tell me what you did. Okay? In Toyota, this is a working document. This is something that has more erase marks than it has pencil marks on it. And it represents the evolving understanding that we have of how the process ticks, what makes it work. Okay? We don't understand all these things up front. The A3 helps us get there. Okay? You may hear a little bit today about value stream mapping. You know, we say, okay, go out there and find that waste, but where is this waste? What's causing the waste? So value stream mapping is a very graphical technique developed by the people at Toyota, now adopted worldwide, and it basically shows the process. We show the process to ourselves in a way that helps us identify the waste in the process, what's causing it, and what we're going to do about it. We have current state maps, we have future state maps, and between these two, we build a plan for how it is that we're going to get from where we are today to where we want to be. This is an example that I just pulled down that shows a value stream map for processes at the FAA. So these types of mapping techniques apply very nicely for administrative processes, and it leads to some great aha moments in how you're going to fix things. One of the first tools that folks reach for very often is this method of 5S. It comes from 5 Japanese terms that all begin with this S sound, but it's basically a technique for creating workplace organization. Many times if you see people working on a job, they're fumbling around trying to find things. It may be a physical thing where somebody borrowed a stapler, mundane example, but it could be things like information. Our directory structure is so Byzantine, we can't find the information that we need to use. So those are examples of 5S. Jerry Bussell earlier today talked about this idea of standard work and leader standard work. This is a core concept in Lean. And it's not there in the traditional way that we have used this in the West. In Western organizations and in the United States, standard work is often a code word for a standard that I hold you to. And if you don't achieve it, I come and I punish you. Here's the standard, you didn't achieve it, why not? And it's a very punitive thing. In the transition towards a leaner culture, organizations develop standard work themselves. Operators develop their standard work, saying these are the steps that I do it in this way, and when I do them in this way, I get this output. And then that becomes the basis for asking the question, I got an output that wasn't very good. What in this process is not adequate? What is not working correctly? Okay? And that becomes the basis for improvement. One of the fathers of the Toyota production system, Taiichi Ono, said it this way. You remember what Kaizen is, right? Continuous improvement? There can't be any continuous improvement if there isn't a standard first. You've got to have an expectation that if you do these things, you'll get this result. So it's people themselves who do the work, who develop the standard work in a lean community. Right? We talked about pull just a little bit, okay? Providing things or doing things only when there's demand for this. This is one office example that I found. This is actually, you know, maybe you run into this problem. We're all out of my favorite flavor of coffee, right? Well, what they do is they take the top off of one of these, they slap it on a card, and they put that so that it's near the back of the box. And then when you're getting low, you pull this card out, and it goes into a little holder that says reorder. Okay? We didn't reorder ahead of time, so we don't have big inventories of this stuff. We didn't run out. We've placed it so that right when we need it is when we place the order and we get replenished. So this is one physical example, but this occurs all over the place. These are other examples. Here's one in an office where they've realigned themselves. Instead of separate departments where nobody ever sees each other, they've co-located everybody here, plucked them out of their departments. Now you're one part of one multifunctional team. And the work flows directly from one person to the next without these big piles of inventory, if you want to call it that, clogging up everybody's inbox, going from one functional department to the next. That's one example of how it is that we create better flow. There are many others. And I just wanted to mention a little bit about kata. Kata is another one of these Japanese terms. This technique is being understood more and more deeply as we go forward. Improvement is a practice. It's a habit, and it's something that needs to be taught and it needs to be coached. Kata is a pattern. So it's a lot like learning a golf swing or a baseball swing. And you go through this practice and this habit again and again. Improvement is a habit as well, and it needs to become second nature in much the same way that you learn things that become second nature and embedded. The folks at Toyota actually have this model in their heads of how it is that they systematically solve any problem in the world. And it looks like this. There are some presentations later on in the day that go into the workings of this model, but it's universal. You find kata being applied all over the world in all different types of processes, and it works for everybody. Okay, okay, I'm going to jump out of this and just go to a couple of slides here that sum up some things that I wanted to share with you with respect to government and government processes. You know, with everything that's been in the news recently, whenever I say lean government these days, I get a bit of a snicker. Yeah, the politics of government, especially down the street at a federal level, can be very frustrating as citizens to look at sometimes. But we're talking about the process of government. And in that regard, when we look at the processes, what you do bears a striking resemblance to what other people have done in the public sector and in the private sector. And the same tools and techniques apply. You've got problems, but they're not that different. They're not that unique. It's a matter of perspective. And seeing that perspective can be challenged sometimes. But as a thought experiment, I just want to leave you with this. I'd like you to think about maybe going off to the doctor's office and going in for a checkup. You know, what would happen if you talked to your doctor and you said something like, well, doc, you know, I'm very unique. As a matter of fact, I'm so different, I'm not quite sure that your Western medicine is actually going to be effective on me. You know, doctor kind of brushes that off and he takes a look at your x-ray and says, oh, here's your problem. And he prescribes you a medication, and he does this believing that it's going to be safe and effective for you. How can he make that claim? How can he do that? And the answer is because he sees unique people like you in a steady parade all day long. And everybody's unique. But the fact is that he's identified what the source of your problem is. And it goes back to the human condition that you share with everybody else. When we talk about process in government, we're talking about process. And the same types of problems that you have in your office are very similar to this problem that somebody has in a completely different industry doing a completely different thing. But it goes back to the same organizational condition. That's how a person like me can stand here with full confidence in telling you that if you apply lean principles as you learn them here today in your organization, it will be safe and effective for you as well. It goes back to the same organizational process condition that you all share. So These are some of the things that I hope you take away from today. I hope I've maybe added to your lean dictionary, and you can go forward for the remainder of the day, and a few of these things will be a little bit more familiar and knowable for you. Okay. Thanks very much.